So if you follow this channel, and especially the couple videos I've done on coronavirus, you'll know that I've talked a lot about a man in Kentucky who has apparently refused to self-quarantine after testing positive for coronavirus. I have a problem with this because it's an issue of freedom, of liberty, and of due process. I haven't seen any process occurring. Well, it turns out there might be more to the story. Let's talk about it. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to Law-Splaining the Interwebs. I'm your host, Nick Rekieta of Rekieta Law, a small law firm in central Minnesota. And we're talking again about coronavirus and this guy in Kentucky and what appears to be a complete lack of due process. Well, why is due process important? What is it? Let's talk into it, and we can use this case as a case study, all right? If you like these short little legal musings, legal updates, all of those things, go ahead, click that subscribe button, click the bell so you get notified when new videos come out, and come join us for a live stream sometime. They're usually weeknights at 11 p.m. Central Time. Don't miss it. They're good fun. All right. Here's the news story, okay? According to CNN, and this has been going for a little while. It is getting regular updates, but a coronavirus patient refused to quarantine, so deputies are surrounding his house to force him to, right? And this is down in Kentucky. A novel coronavirus patient, listen to how this reads, okay? Because this is the narrative that you're on making the decision about this. A Kentucky novel coronavirus checked himself out of the hospital against medical advice, so to prevent him from spreading the virus. Officials are surrounding his house to keep him there. That sounds terrible, right? He's confirmed coronavirus patient, told not to leave, leaves the hospital, goes home, refuses to self-quarantine, okay? That's the story. 53-year-old man in Nelson County refused to quarantine himself after testing positive for COVID-19. Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear said. So it's coming straight from the governor, so you know it's true. It's reported by the media. It's definitely true, right? No need. Lock this jerk up. He's out there being dangerous to the society, okay? Remember this. Okay, it's a step I hoped I'd never have to take, Beshear said in a conference on Saturday. But it can't allow one person who we know has this virus to refuse to protect their neighbors. Let's take a different look. This is from the Kentucky Standard. Okay? This is from an editor of the Kentucky Standard. Wife of reported Nelson County COVID-19 case says recent exposure to community limited. Subject had spent several days in Louisville hospital. Wife disputes tests. Now, let's find out. This was paywalled. They've lifted the paywall on the developing story of COVID's impact on the community. Now that we can see behind this paywall, what's this say? The wife of a Nelson County man who reportedly tested positive for the COVID-19 disease told the Kentucky Standard Saturday night, now reportedly means reported in the news, that he had largely been isolated for almost a week, and she disputed reports that any test for the novel coronavirus had been administered. Standard was able to verify through multiple sources the man's identity, but agreed to withhold his name and other identifying information because of threats of personal violence the family has already received. Right? Because you have the governor of the state saying that you're out there trying to coup fin soup and kill a bunch of other people. That's what Beshear is saying. If he leaves his house, he's going to kill people. And we don't want him to kill people, right? That's why he needs to be locked down under armed guard. John was present during the phone interview. So they're calling him John and Jane. John Doe, Jane Doe. John was present during the phone interview, but declined to comment himself, designating his wife as his spokesperson. Jane said her husband has suffered for years with COPD, has not worked since September. Jane said John started having a persistent cough and difficulty breathing around March 4th. She said the change of seasons can be difficult for people with COPD. Now we sound like a stupid ad. She said they called his pulmonologist when he started having difficulty, and the doctor prescribed him a steroid and antibiotics after his blood oxygen levels dropped. He'd suffered a bout of acute hypoxia lung failure in November, but had been in good health and off his oxygen until then. By Sunday, March 8th, his oxygen levels had dropped to dangerous levels. And on Monday, his pulmonologist recommended he check himself into the emergency department of University of Louisville Hospital and arranged for his admittance. When they arrived in the ER hospital in Louisville on Monday, his blood oxygen level dropped to 83. He had gone to acute hypoxia and was admitted to intensive care. While in ICU, he was tested at least twice for influenza, had 2 chest x-rays, and had blood cultures run, Jane said. Everything came back normal, Jane said. I know this because I asked the nurse. He remained in ICU until about 4 p.m. on Thursday when he was transferred to inpatient care room they shared with another patient. That evening, they decided to check out of the hospital and left about 10:30 p.m. Jane said, at no point was John quarantined. If there was any positive results, they would not have let us leave. Okay, so immediately, remember, against medical advice. What does that mean? How did they verify that? Who verified it? We don't actually know from the story who verified it, or how CNN over here is saying that he did this against medical advice. Well, how do they have access to his medical advice? Right? That's protected information, protected health information. The hospital disclosing it would be in violation of the law if they did so. If they disclosed it to the government, there tends to need to be a process in place, and the government disclosing it might actually be violating this guy's rights as well. But here's the thing. We don't know of any medical advice that actually was given to keep him in the hospital at all. We're just taking it for granted because the governor and CNN said it. Here's the wife saying, no, that's not what happened. Pretty interesting. They drove directly home, Jane said. They remained at home the next day. It was about 10:30 p.m. on Friday, which would be the next day. Jane said when representatives from Lincoln Trail District Health Department contacted John by phone and told him he had tested positive for COVID-19. Jane said health officials started asking a battery of questions at that point. Jane said the health department had some trouble reaching them. John is from another county and recently moved to Nelson, and the health department was able to find them, quote, through the grapevine. We don't even know if this is the right guy. She said she and John told health officials that they were wrong. We told them we know it isn't true. She said he never even ran a fever at the hospital. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have COVID-19. Let's be very clear on that. You could be asymptomatic. You could be a carrier. But let's go on, because this is the interesting part. She said she has access to John's medical records online, and as of Saturday night, there's nothing in his files that showed any tests for COVID-19. She said the family had obtained legal counsel, and their lawyers also told the couple there was no positive test results in John's medical files. Okay, now we have to ask questions. If he was tested positive, and Bashir, CNN, everybody reporting on this, even me, has said he tested positive. I was under the assumption that these were true and accurate reports. Now we have a disputed report from the wife saying, whoa, we don't have any tests in the records. His attorneys are saying there's no tests in his records. She didn't hear about any tests being administered at the hospital. No tests online. What's going on? How do we know this guy even has COVID-19? How does the governor know he has it? And how does CNN and other news agencies know that he has it? Who's selling the narrative? Where's it coming from? Jane said health officials told them they had to self-quarantine, and if they refused, they could face arrest. Oh, she also said there is no record he was tested. None, Jane said. Jane said they were served with a subpoena signed by Circuit Court Judge Jack CA at 3:31 p.m. Saturday that restricted them from leaving their home until March 26th. She said there are 6 adults in the home who remain under quarantine. So it's not just John and Jane. There are 4 other people who are there as well. According to Jane's timeline, John was not circulating in the community. Who cares? She remained steadfast in her insistence that her husband was never tested for novel coronavirus. We're not going to change our lifestyles because we know it isn't true. Now imagine you in this situation. You go to the hospital. You're not tested. As far as you know, you're not tested. Someone calls you and says, oh, yeah, you have it. And you're like, wait, I don't have the symptoms. You go online, you look at your medical records. I don't see the test. I wasn't tested for this. I don't have this. Why do I have to stop? His cough, his lung issues can be explained by a pre-existing condition that he's had for years. Why would you suddenly change? Why does everybody in that house, now maybe Maybe John doesn't want to go out because he might be particularly vulnerable. Maybe he does. That's his choice. Who cares? If he wants to go die, he can go die. Interestingly, we do have a right to kind of do that. But either way, there are 6 people in that house. None of them can leave. None of them are allowed to leave if any of them needed to go get something. Can they? No, they can't do it. So Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear announced at a press conference Saturday afternoon that an unidentified man had tested positive for the coronavirus and left the hospital against medical advice. The only information state officials had released as of midnight Sunday was that the Nelson County case was a 53-year-old man who had been ordered to self-quarantine. Local health officials referred all media inquiries to the state. Barbara Fox, public information officer with Kentucky Cabinet for Health and Family Services, said she was prevented from releasing more information by privacy laws. How'd anybody else get it? Suddenly the privacy laws matter, right? Right? When that narrative is challenged, suddenly we're running into privacy laws. I'll have to refer you to the press briefings that Governor Beshear has been holding daily, and often twice daily. We are releasing information that doesn't violate HIPAA or privacy law as we receive it, and details are not always available immediately. She said in an email to the Standard, "We are being as forthcoming with information as quickly as we possibly can right now." Fox said divulging patient details does not necessarily go a long way in terms of preventing illness. That often does very little good and just increases stigma, paranoia, etc. But in a community the size of Nelson County, it did not take people long on social media to identify John and Jane's real names. Jane changed her last name on Facebook Saturday afternoon after she said she and her family had been threatened with violence and people had driven by their home, which is in a rural part of the county. Nelson County Sheriff's deputies are monitoring the family 24/7 and ensuring they comply with the judge's order. A court case is expected to be filed on Monday by the county attorney to formalize the forced quarantine, but that case will likely be sealed for privacy reasons. Of course it will, right? For their protection. Jane said they are complying with the judge's order, but it caught them by surprise, and with 6 adults and pets in the home, they did not get an opportunity to stock up on supplies. They have no family close by, so they're still figuring out Saturday night how to stay fed until March 26th. Now, if you're wondering why didn't they prepare, I'm sorry, they didn't have to. There's no legal requirement for them to prepare, but another reason might be because John was taking care of Jane, who was recovering from surgery prior to this. I'm not sure if that was in this article or a different one, but allegedly John was taking care of Jane, who was recovering from surgery, and they basically trading off taking care of each other as this goes. And they just didn't get a chance to go out and buy things. We don't know the status of the other 4 adults in the home. We don't know if there's anything that prevented them from contributing or what, if they're older, younger. We have no information about any of them presently available. Or I say we, I don't have any information. This is the critical aspect of the due process requirement. Now we have 6 people's lives who are in turmoil. We have an accusation coming from a government official and an armed guard posted outside their home in a rural community. Well, how hard is it to find an armed guard in a rural community? Not very. First of all, you probably know the cops. Second of all, if you don't, your neighbor does. Trust me, I live in a rural community. Really easy to find out information like this, even though it's largely protected. Doesn't matter. You're going to find out. The town is going to gossip. People are going to know exactly who this is. Now they've been threatened with violence because their very existence outside of their home has been labeled by the government, by the governor, the highest executive of the state, as a risk to public safety. What are these people supposed to do? And according to them, and now we're taking them at their word, but why is their word, in many people's minds, maybe even in yours, why are their word less credible than the governor's words and CNN's? I've spent the past several years not giving a single damn care in the world about what CNN has to say, right? Like CNN has zero credibility with me. They might be right on something. They might be wrong. I have no way to know whether or not CNN is correct because they've been incorrect about several very important things, and they've been known to twist various narratives or various facts to meet their editorial narratives. I've seen it over and over and over in several other areas of their reporting. Why should I trust this to be any different? Governor Beshear, that guy has motivation for this to happen because he needs to justify his emergency powers. And make no mistake, executives of states love to take emergency powers and solve the problem, looks good, helps with their next campaign. Very simple reasons and motivations for these people to do something to save the community, look good, and go ahead and give people a reason to vote for them when they acted confidently in a time of crisis, right? But now we have a counter narrative from the people involved, and we have to start asking questions. Wait a minute. Health information is typically protected. So how is any of this verified when CNN has allegedly not spoken to the wife? Where did the governor get this info? How do we know that this is correct when the counter narrative from people who have no real reason to lie? I mean, they're complying. If they go outside, they're going to get shot. So they're complying with the order. What good does lying do for them? It's not going to make them go outside. Now, we know they haven't even had the hearing at the time of the writing of this article. They hadn't even had the hearing yet. They're going to formalize the charges. Now they have counsel. But it's going to be sealed. So let's say, what are we going to do? Are we going to have their attorney is going to make a case and say, look, we don't have any information that they're tested. We want to present this evidence that there's no testing, that they had no knowledge of it. And they're going to say, what do we do? This is the reason courts are transparent. This is the reason why we have due process. We actually don't know if these people should be quarantined, but it raises a panic. It puts them in danger, and it makes the governor look like they're doing something, and it makes the media, well, it helps the media reinforce their little frenzy, doesn't it? Right? Looks worse than it is. This guy's refusing to quarantine, even though by all accounts, they did self-quarantine. You know what it sounds like? It sounds like they wanted to go to the store and buy food. Little bit of a different narrative than them running around, coughing in a retirement home, getting a bunch of people sick. They wanted to go to the store to buy food. And they can't do it because other people have said that this guy has coronavirus, and they apparently have no knowledge of it. Due process and representation are guaranteed constitutional rights. The 5th and 6th Amendments. You have those. And heaven forbid this happens to you, where a government just says that you have some condition that prevents you from leaving your home when you need to eat. Heaven forbid that happens to you, and there's no one there to represent you, and there's no process in place to give you a chance to just say, now wait a minute. Oh, and let's just throw in the fact that a governor has basically accused them of trying to be a walking bioweapon, and all sorts of people believed it without questioning it. Did you? What do you think? Leave it in the comments. Hope you have a good day. Stay safe, stay healthy, don't get quarantined by armed guards. Peace. Peace.